Progressive left's dominant frame on immigration score, 9 out of 50. Modern progressive left score, 8 out of 50. This is the primary map, everything else is downstream of it. The progressive left's dominant frame on immigration treats enforcement itself as the moral problem. Border control, deportation, and federal immigration operations are not viewed as ordinary state functions with trade-offs. They are cast as systemic violence against the vulnerable. Once that fusion is in place, ordinary cost-benefit questions become almost impossible to ask cleanly. Scrutiny of illegal immigration patterns, crime concentrations, or the incentives created by sanctuary policies is reframed as bigotry or cruelty. The update costs are therefore extreme. Identity and moral status are tightly bound to the claim that resistance to enforcement is pure solidarity. That frame does not stay abstract. It generates a lived climate. Local networks form to monitor agents, signal their presence, document operations, and promote non-cooperation. Presence itself becomes a status performance. The more disruptive or confrontational the stance, the higher the moral rank inside the map. Incentives reward the appearance of resistance over accurate assessment of risk. Error correction is punished, acknowledging that inserting civilians into active federal operations raises the chance of lethal outcomes is treated as betrayal or victim blaming. At scale, the pattern hardens. Media and institutional amplifiers convert any enforcement action into evidence of systemic evil, which further raises the social price of noticing the original cost structure. Renée Nicole Good is one visible product of that climate. On the morning of 7 January 2026 in South Minneapolis, she stopped her vehicle sideways across a residential street during an active ICE operation. She and her partner were present as observers linked to local ICE watch networks. Agents ordered her out. Her partner shouted for her to drive. She accelerated with an agent positioned at the front of the vehicle. 3 shots were fired. She died. The agent's decision sits inside a narrow legal window. Deadly force is authorized only when a reasonable officer believes the vehicle itself poses an imminent threat of death or serious injury, and no safer alternative exists, including simply moving out of the path. That is the standard. Whether the agent met it in the exact fraction of a second is a question the investigation still has to answer. It is secondary. The primary fact is that the confrontation only existed because the progressive immigration map had already made interference with federal operations a moral good. Without that map, a mother of 3 is not sitting sideways across the street during an active enforcement action. Without that map, the partner is not shouting drive. Without that map, the agent never faces the split-second choice. The high-cost system created the conditions. The agent's possible error is contingent on those conditions. Then the map did what high-cost maps do after a damaging outcome. It fed on the result. The death was rapidly converted into pure proof of systemic evil. Motherhood, queer identity, and the image of state violence became purity markers. Any analysis that included her decision to remain and then accelerate was treated as moral failure. The same system that produced the conditions for the outcome immediately raised the cost of examining those conditions still higher. Error correction became more expensive, not less. That is the parallel to the Jason Arde case. In both instances, a high-cost progressive frame creates the human who collides with reality, then treats scrutiny of the frame as the real crime and uses the outcome as fuel. The mainstream media layer score 12 indictments, and the broader progressive left score 8 indictments amplify the same structure. They do not invent the fusion, they enforce it at scale. Status incentives reward the correct outrage. Feedback that would lower operating costs is filtered or moralized out of existence. The result is a self-reinforcing loop. The map produces the confrontation produces the corpse is used to harden the map further. This is not a claim that every individual activist is malicious. Many are captured by the status and identity rewards the map supplies. Some disseminators of the frame know exactly what they are doing. The maps do not require a conspiracy. They only require the measured cost structure, tight identity fusion, status protection of contested claims, and error correction made socially toxic. Once those features are in place, the pattern repeats. A lower-cost immigration frame would treat enforcement as an ordinary state function with measurable trade-offs. It would keep update costs low enough that risk, incentives, and downstream effects could be discussed without moral contamination. It would not need to convert every lethal outcome into further proof of its own righteousness. That frame is not the one currently dominant. The one that is dominant scores 9 out of 50 for a reason. It makes the confrontation more likely, then makes learning from the confrontation more expensive. Renée Good is dead. The map that put her there is still running.